All right, members of the jury, welcome back. I'm sorry for the delay. Just one of those things that happens during the course of a trial that if you watch TV, legal shows, doesn't really show you how that works. But nonetheless, we're ready to proceed. Everyone else may have a seat. In the state, you may call your next witness.
Your Honor, the state would next recall SS.
Ma'am, good afternoon to you, ma'am. Just go ahead and have a seat. I think Mr. Gray already placed a cup of water there for you, so if you need something else, just let us know.
Okay.
You can adjust the microphone to help your voice project a little bit. Go ahead and read the instruction now.
Yes, please, Your Honor. Would you read the instruction?
All right, members of the jury, the evidence you're about to receive concerning other crimes, wrongs, or acts allegedly committed by the defendant will be considered by you for the limited purpose of proving motive, opportunity, intent, plan, absence of mistake or accident, and corroboration of IS as to count 3 of the indictment, and motive as to count 1 and 2 of the indictment. However, and you shall consider it only as relates to those issues. However, the defendant is not on trial for a crime, wrong, or act that is not included in the indictment. State, you may inquire. You're ready.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Can you just again state your name for the record again?
Samaya Sawyer.
And we'll refer to you as SS the remaining of your testimony. And, ma'am, what is your date of birth again?
September 25th, 2003.
And how old are you today?
I'm 19.
Back in 2017, how old would you have been before your birthday?
14.
How old would you have been post-birthday?
I'm sorry. The previous question is 13, and this question is 14.
Yes, ma'am. And then in 2018, how old? What 2 ages would you have been, depending on the month, based on your birthday in September?
14 and 15.
Now, during those time frames, I believe you had stated that you had spent a lot of time at the defendant's house. And again, just for record purposes, the person that you know to be Johnathan Quiles, is he still located here in the courtroom today, like as of last week?
Yes, ma'am.
And just identify something that he is wearing today.
A white shirt.
And is he? And then what part of the courtroom?
To my right.
Your Honor, just let the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant again.
So reflected.
And would you spend a lot of time at the defendant's house with your aunt and also your Aunt Naomi's house?
Yes.
And would you spend time at the defendant's house along with your sister?
Yes.
And then would there be times where only you out of the siblings went to the defendant's home?
Yes.
Now, during the time frame when you were between the ages of 13 and 15, were they living at that 1503 16th Street house?
Yes.
And just so that we know that we're talking about the same house, I'm just going to show you one picture very briefly. It states Composite 19. Are we talking about this residence here in States 19G?
Yes.
Okay. And how often do you think you would visit at the defendant's house? And your Aunt Naomi's house during the ages of 13 and 15?
Very often, yeah.
And just to kind of maybe hone it down just a little bit, would that be weekly or maybe every two weeks type situation?
About every 2 weeks, yeah.
And was your mom a single mother during that time?
Yes.
And would you go over to the defendant's house and your Aunt Naomi's house because the defendant would be there and be an adult over you?
Yes.
Is that fair to say because your aunt would be at work most of the time?
Yes.
Okay. Now, during this time frame, SS, did something happen between you and the defendant that was also inappropriate?
Yes.
Were you first the age of 13 when something happened?
Yes.
Now, we also talked about the residence. Was there another 2 locations that we're about to talk about where inappropriate things that your uncle did to you?
Yes.
Where were those 2 locations, just generally speaking?
The car and the beach. The beach.
And we're talking about the car. What type of car?
It was a red van.
I'm going to be showing you again just one picture from State's Composite 21. I'm showing you State's Evidence 21C. Is that the red van that you were just talking about?
Yes.
And then the beach, would that be down in like Jacksonville Beach area?
Yes.
And have you recently viewed a picture of yourself at the beach back in March of 2018?
Yes.
And was that picture on the defendant's cell phone?
Yes.
And was it a picture of you? There's 2 pictures, wasn't there?
Yes, ma'am.
And was there a picture of you and NQ in one of them?
Yes.
And then was there a picture of you, IS, and NQ in another picture?
Yes.
Now, can you tell us about before we get to the incidents, will the defendant ever compliment you?
Yes.
And what type of compliments would he give you?
Like compliment my body or tell me I was beautiful.
Can you talk, and I know this is tough, but yeah, can you get a little closer? We just want to make sure everyone can hear what you say, okay?
Yeah. He would compliment my body or tell me I'm beautiful.
Now, when you say compliment your body, what exactly do you mean by that?
Like my shape or, yeah.
Would that include the breast area?
Yes.
Would that include the buttocks area?
Yes.
Did you have any other uncles compliment you in that way?
No.
How did the compliments make you feel?
Like a little uncomfortable. Yeah.
Now, did the defendant like to talk to you when you were not at the residence of his and his ex-wife's Naomi Mobley?
Yes.
How did the defendant like to talk to you?
Through Snapchat.
And did the defendant tell you why he liked to speak with you by Snapchat?
Yes.
And why is that?
Because the message is a race.
And would the defendant do these compliments as well in the Snapchat format?
Yes.
Now, did the compliments turn into a more sexual nature?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
He would say things that he would want to do to me or send pictures of himself.
What kind of pictures would he send of himself?
Nude.
Now, drawing your attention to when you were 13, this would have been in 2017, is that accurate?
Yes, ma'am.
And this would have been before your birthday in September of 2017?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember what time of the year in 2017?
Late 2017.
So if it's late 2017, would you have been 14?
Yeah, but some were before I was 14, yeah.
Okay. So first I want to talk about when you're 13, when something first happened. Do you recall?
Yes,
Where were you?
at the beach.
Who was at the beach on this occasion?
Me, my sister, and the defendant's daughter.
Was it common for the four of you to go to the beach together?
Yes.
Where were you specifically at on the beach? And what I mean, had you gone to a restroom? Were you on the sand, the water? Tell us kind of more detailed wise.
The water.
And where was NQ and IS?
On the sand.
Can you tell us what happened when you and the defendant are in the water at the beach when you're 13 years old?
Yes. He was touching me like with his hands over my body.
Now, did you have a bathing suit on?
Yes.
I know, just making sure. Typically, what kind of bathing suit would you wear?
A two-piece.
And you said that his hands, and where did they touch?
My body.
Now, when you say your body, that can mean a lot of different things. Can you just take us maybe from head to toe where he touched you on your body?
My breasts, my butt, and my front area.
And I apologize for, and we can refer to it as front area, the rest of the testimony potentially. I might have to clarify sometimes, but just for record purposes, when you say front area, are you referring to your vagina area?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, when he used his hands, defendant, to touch you and I think you said your breast, your buttocks, and then the front area, which we know what that means here. Would he touch you over your bathing suit or under your bathing suit on this time?
Both.
Now, did you want him to do that?
No.
Okay. Did it feel awful?
Yes.
How long did it last?
Around 2 minutes.
Did it seem like an eternity?
Yeah.
Now, after that, did you tell anyone?
No.
And why not?
It's embarrassing, I guess. Yeah.
Was it hard to understand it?
Yeah.
Was the defendant somebody that you had gotten to know well?
Yes.
And the defendant was, a lot of the time, you were in his care, weren't you?
Yes.
Was it confusing?
Yes.
Now, did anything else that your memory tells you happened when you were 13?
I'm not really good with dates. Not that.
Well, let me ask you this. You talked about the touching. Did that happen when you were 13?
Yes.
And it happened at the beach?
Yes.
Now, when you were 13, did the defendant ever touch you with some other part of his body?
Yes.
Which part? Or parts?
His genital area.
What about his mouth?
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about the mouth first. Where did now did the defendant use his mouth at any time during this time at the beach?
Not that I can recall.
And at this time at the beach when you were 13, did the defendant use, and we'll get into more specifics and if it applies or not, with his genitals at the beach, and this time?
I believe he was kissing my neck. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is it hard to relive this?
Yeah.
So the defendant kissed your neck when you were at the beach when the first time you were 13?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, when you were 13, did the defendant kiss you on the lips?
Yes.
Would that have been at the beach or somewhere else?
At the beach.
Okay. Now, did anything else happen at the beach on this occasion besides the touching? And I say besides, I'm not trying to obviously minimize, but we've already discussed regards the kissing and the touching.
He rubbed himself against me.
Okay. Now, when you say rubbed himself, does that mean that his body touched your body where it was rubbing up against each other?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you feel his genitals rubbing against your genitals?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have your bathing suit on at this time?
Yes, ma'am.
Did the defendant have a bathing suit on?
It was like shorts.
Okay. And did he have a shirt on or off?
Off.
Okay. After this happened, SS, did something happen after another time?
Yes.
And where were you located?
At his house.
I'm sorry.
At his house.
And is that the house that we just looked at in States 19, the yellow house?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you recall approximately how old you were at this time?
Around 13, 14.
And do you recall who was at the house during this time?
Yes.
Who?
My Aunt Naomi, me. I'm not sure if his daughter was there at the time, and him.
And with any other your siblings present?
No.
So so it was in total 4 of you, or 3, maybe 4, but you know for sure 3 of you.
Yes.
Where did something happen in the house or outside the house?
In the living room.
And do you recall what time of day or night this was?
It was late at night.
Where were you located at late at night?
On the couch.
Where was your Aunt Naomi located?
In her room.
Were you asleep?
Yes.
Did something happen that awoke you?
Yes.
What happened where you woke up?
The defendant was touching me.
And did the defendant come onto the couch with you?
Yes.
And did the defendant say anything to you?
Not that I remember.
And what did the defendant do to you while you were on the couch?
He was touching me.
I know it's hard, I know, but we've got to have you speak up because we just all need to make sure we know what you're saying, okay? I know it's hard.
He was touching me.
Okay. When you say touching me, I know I have to ask the difficult questions. I apologize again. Do you need some water or anything? You okay?
Okay.
All right. When you say touching me, what is the defendant touching you with?
His genitals.
Do you have clothes on at this time?
Not the bottom portion.
Did you have your bottom portion on prior to the defendant waking you up?
Yes.
Did you have like a 1-piece pajama set or a 2-piece pajama set?
It was 2.
So are you saying that the defendant pulled down were you wearing pants or shorts?
It was shorts.
Did the defendant pull your shorts down?
Yes.
Now, you're on the couch sleeping. Did you have a blanket or pillow or anything with you on the couch?
It was a blanket and the couch pillows.
Okay, so you were sleeping with the couch pillows and then you did have a blanket for the evening?
Yes.
Now, were you on top of the blanket or underneath the blanket?
It was just like on me. I was underneath it.
You were underneath the blanket? Is that a yes for the record?
Yes.
Now, did the defendant come underneath the blanket with you?
No.
The defendant was on top of the blanket?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What did the defendant do with the blanket, if he did anything at all?
Just like moved it to the side.
Did you want the defendant to pull your shorts down?
No.
Did you say anything?
No.
Were you in shock?
Yes.
Did your panties get pulled down?
Yes.
Will you tell us what happened from there?
He is intercourse.
Do you need a second?
I'm okay.
Okay.
It was intercourse.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry. I know.
It was intercourse, and he was just touching me all over.
Okay. I have to ask you a hard question. I'm to make sure I have it right on the record. And you can just say yes or no, okay? When you say intercourse, does that mean that the defendant inserted his penis inside of your vagina?
Yes.
And you did not want this to happen, did you?
No.
And you said that you were either 13 or 14 at the time?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you said that the defendant was touching you all over. Is that with his hands?
Yes.
Did your shirt ever come off during this time?
No.
Did your Aunt Naomi ever come out the bedroom during this time?
No.
Did the defendant use his mouth for anything during this time?
Not that I can remember.
After this happened to you, after this incident, did you tell anyone?
No.
And why not?
I didn't know how, or I just didn't.
Did you just say you didn't know how?
Yeah.
Were you scared?
Yeah.
Now, did the defendant sexual abuse you again after this?
Yes.
Where were you located?
In the car.
And that's the red minivan in States 21 that you had identified for us?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, were you and the defendant going anywhere?
Yes.
Where were you guys? Where were the two? Was it just the two of you, or was there more people in the car?
Just the two.
And where were the two of you going?
To the store.
And do you recall what store it was?
Winn-Dixie, I believe.
Okay. And do you recall if it was in the daytime, the nighttime?
It was the daytime.
Do you recall approximately how old you were?
14, 15-ish.
Did something happen beyond just going to Winn-Dixie?
Yes.
Did the defendant take you to Winn-Dixie with the car?
No.
Where did the defendant take you?
Like an isolated area.
And was it here, though, still in Jacksonville?
Yes.
And what happened in the van?
I got in the back seat and he bent me over.
Did you want to go in the back seat?
No.
And, obviously we've looked at the pictures. Are we talking about the two center seats, or are we talking about the third row?
Third row.
Did the defendant ask you to go to the back seat or tell you to go back seat? How did that happen?
More like tell me to go to the back seat.
And what happened in the back seat?
He bent me over and we had penetrational intercourse.
And when you say bent you over, Did he take off any of your clothing?
My pants.
And would that include your panties?
Yeah.
And again, I apologize for saying these harsh terms with you. I know you're still only 19. The defendant also, at this time in the red van that we talked about in States 21, insert his penis into your vagina.
Yes.
Now, did the defendant do anything with his hands during this horrible time?
Not that I can recall.
What about, did the defendant do anything with his mouth to you?
I believe he was kissing my neck.
The defendant was kissing your neck?
Yes.
Did the defendant say anything to you?
No.
Now, after this, did you go back to the defendant's house?
Yes.
Did you tell anyone?
No.
And was it based upon the same reasons that you've already told us about being scared, confused, not knowing what to do?
Yes.
Now, is there another time that the defendant sexually abused you that you remember?
Yes.
And is that in regards, again, at the defendant's residence?
Yes.
And were you staying the night?
Yes.
Do you recall who was there that night?
Yes.
Who was home?
Him, his daughter, and me.
So just the three of you?
Yes.
Was your Aunt Naomi working through the night?
Yes.
Do you recall approximately how old you were?
14, 15.
And is it fair to say that in totality, any sexual abuse that the defendant did to you was between 2017 and 2018?
I'm going to object. Is counsel testifying or asking a question?
Sustained.
Would we have been in, when you're 14 or 15, would we have been in 2017 or 2018?
Both.
Okay. Now, the incident that you're here discussing now in regards to being at the defendant's residence, do you recall approximately when that was?
Late 2017. Oh, no, 2018.
Okay. And would this have occurred prior to your sister's disappearance and murder?
Yes.
Now, can you tell us what happened during this incident?
Yes. I was in the bedroom in the bed. And his daughter was next to me asleep. And it was penetrational intercourse again.
Were you sleeping in the defendant's bed?
Yes.
And I believe you stated there was two other individuals in the bed as well?
Yes.
And was that the defendant?
Yes.
And you stated it was his daughter, NQ?
Yes.
Do you recall how old she approximately was at the time?
Like 3 or 4.
Was she awake or asleep?
Sleep.
Were you asleep at the time?
Yes.
Did the defendant wake you up?
Yes.
Did the defendant do anything to your clothing?
The bottoms were off.
When you say the bottoms, what does that include?
Underwear and shorts.
And did the defendant do anything with his genitalia?
Yes.
And what did he do?
It was penetrational intercourse.
Okay. And Did the defendant insert his penis inside of your vagina?
Yes.
The defendant, did he use his hands at all during this sexual abuse?
Besides groping me, I don't think so.
And again, just to be clear, when you say groping, does that mean the defendant's hands would touch your chest area, your private area, and your buttocks area?
Yes.
Did the defendant do anything with his mouth during this time?
Not that I can recall.
Now, after this sexual abuse occurred, did you tell anyone?
No.
Was it based on the same reasons that you've already stated?
Yes.
Now, the last time you testified, we had talked about Don Quay. Well, before I get to that, are there any other incidents of sexual abuse that you remember?
Not that I can recall right now.
Okay. So, when you testified last week, you had talked about Don Quay and parsley. Did the defendant ever ask you to take Don Quay and parsley?
Yes.
And did you ever receive Don Quay and parsley pills?
Yes.
And who did you receive these pills from?
The defendant.
And did you take the pills?
Yes.
Did you have any effects physically from taking Don Quay and parsley, and did you take them together?
Together, it makes you drowsy.
Okay. And did you notice any other physical conditions?
Not that I can recall.
Now, we had looked at your previously about pictures from your bedroom. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And that states 18 for the record. And were those Don Quay and parsley pills, again, were they found in you and IS's bedroom?
Yes.
And where did those bottles come from?
The defendant.
Now, were you in love with the defendant like your sister IS thought she was?
Your Honor, argumentative and speculative.
I was asking her.
I understand the
Oh, I'm sorry.
overruled.
No.
And did your sister find out what had happened to you?
Yes.
Did it hurt your sister?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor,
Basis?
and speculation.
Overruled.
And you already answered, so we'll just move on. And one of my last questions for you, ma'am. After finding out what the defendant had done to you, is that why IS had sex with Kamara Humphrey?
Yes.
Was it revenge?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
Overruled.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Counsel, from now on, whoever asks questions and who makes objections. I thought that was pretty clear. Just from now on.
Can we verify if that red photo is still?
It is, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much.
May I please escort? All right, good afternoon.
Afternoon.
And I know we tend to trail off, so I'm going to try to remind you, just like Ms. French did, to stay up close to the mic just so that we can make sure we hear everything moving forward, okay?
Okay.
All right. I want to just kind of go back and start a little bit before where we left off. You've kind of detailed and gone through, I believe, four incidences, essentially. There was a beach incident, an incident on the couch, there was one in the van at when you were headed to Winn-Dixie, and then there was a last one on Mr. Quiles and your Aunt Naomi's bed with their daughter also on the bed. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Those are the 4 incidents that you can recall as you sit here today.
Yes.
There were no other incidents that you can remember outside of those 4.
No.
And you said that you weren't the best with dates, so the date and time period that you provided is basically into 2017 into 2018, but nothing more specific than that.
Yes.
All right, when your sister was missing, she'd been gone for nearly 2 weeks at that point. You'd been confronted about your Uncle John's relationship with her at that point. You'd also been lumped in with your sister, and accusations, including you, were put out, correct?
Correct.
You were asked, had Mr. Quiles ever forced himself upon you or forced you to have sex? Your answer was, he never did anything to me. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
You said to your mother, you said to several police officers that nothing ever happened between you and Mr. Quiles. Correct?
Correct.
You then changed that at some point in that conversation or in later conversations to, well, he just touched me on my buttocks or in my chest. Correct?
Correct.
You were confronted again and again, asked about these scenarios to figure out what was really going on. Correct?
Correct.
After being confronted several times, not even on the same dates, not even by the same officers, you finally said it happened once, and you described a couch incident. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Now that couch incident, it's fair to say you've described that incident in several different ways, on several different dates, in several different occasions, correct?
I wouldn't agree with that.
You at one point said that that incident happened in the evening time when your Aunt Naomi was sleeping in the other room. Did you not?
Probably.
You then changed that and said, oh no, she was awake. Do you recall telling me that?
Yes.
In fact, you told me that she was awake, and the way you knew she was awake was because she had a conversation or spoke to Mr. Quiles. Correct?
Correct.
The dates on which you said that incident happened varied widely. At one point, you said it happened in December of 2017. Another time, you said it happened earlier in the year. Correct?
Don't recall.
Now, I want to ask you a quick question. As far as these incidents that you've described, is it safe to say, or is it fair to say, that all of them occurred while Mr. Quiles and your Aunt Naomi were living at that 16th Street house? No matter where they occurred, but that's where they were living during this time period.
Maybe. I'm not good with dates.
All right. Do you recall telling police that all of these incidents happened while Mr. Quiles and your Aunt Naomi were living on the 16th, in the 16th Street house?
I don't recall.
Are you alleging then today that there were sexual encounters or interactions with Mr. Quiles that happened after he moved to the Trout River Drive home?
No.
You're not alleging that he had any sexual encounters with you after they moved to the Trout River Drive?
Not that I can recall.
All right, thank you. You would agree that they moved to that Trout River Drive house in April of 2018. Does that sound about right?
I don't recall.
And just for dates, and I know you said you're not great at dates, so I'm just going to try to put this to rest. If they in fact moved there in April of 2018, you would say, or you would agree, that any alleged sexual encounters ended in April of 2018, if that in fact is the date that they moved to the Trout River address?
No.
You believe it continued after that date?
Like intercourse?
Yes. Or any sexual encounters? You've described 4.
I guess. No. No.
Well, just make it clear for me, because either it ended in April 2018 when they moved to the Trout River address, if all of the incidents happened at the 16th Street address, or it continued to happen and it did happen at the Trout River address. So which one is it?
No.
It did not continue at the Trout River address.
It would have had to, yes.
Okay. You are changing that even right here as you sit.
You're confusing me.
I'll try to make it clear. I'm not trying to confuse you. I'm just trying to get an idea of when it stopped. You've previously told police that it only happened while they were living at the 16th Street address. If they moved to the Trout River address in April of 2018, you may not remember that. Someone else will. If they moved to that house in April of 2018, your statements that it only happened at the 16th Street address would mean that it did not continue after April of 2018, correct?
No.
Okay. After you told police that the sexual encounters with Mr. Quiles only happened one time on the couch, you never detailed any sort of beach incident where you were touched inappropriately or anything like that at that time, correct?
Not that I recall.
In fact, it was 4 months where you led police to believe that this couch incident was the only sexual encounter you alleged to have happened. Do you recall that time period?
No.
You went 4 months without changing that version of what happened until you talked to Detective Milowicki. Do you recall talking to Detective Milowicki?
Yes.
And that was around April of 2019, nearly 4 months after your sister went missing. Correct?
Yes.
You gave a statement to Detective Milowicki. Do you remember doing that?
Yes.
Do you remember when you gave that statement to her, you told her essentially, hey, I want to tell you everything that happened. I want to give you all the details I didn't give you before. Do you remember that conversation with Detective Milowicki?
Yes.
Do you remember telling her what I just said, that you were going to come clean and basically tell her everything you didn't tell her before?
Not those exact words, but yes.
That sentiment. I may not be quoting you, and I wasn't there, so I don't know exactly what you said, but am I at least characterizing it in the same way that you talked to to Detective Milowicki?
Yes.
Okay. In that statement, you gave some background and some details to several incidents that occurred. Do you recall talking to Detective Milowicki about being punched in the face?
I don't recall the face, but being hit, yes.
You don't recall talking to Detective Milowicki about being punched in the face?
Not being hit, yes.
One moment, please. Do you recall telling your mother that you got hit in the face?
It's 5 years ago.
So you're not saying it's not possible that you said that, you just don't recall it as you sit here today?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall telling Detective Milowicki that it was Mr. Quiles who punched you in the face because you told him, and I quote, he had a small dick?
Maybe.
You maybe remember telling that to Detective Milowicki?
I don't recall.
In your statement, when you talked to Detective Milowicki, you later told her that that wasn't true. Do you remember telling her that?
I don't recall.
Do you remember telling her that you were punched because he wanted you to take some green pills?
Yes.
Do you remember telling her that he punched you and made you take 10 green pills, exactly 10 green pills?
I don't remember the amount I told her, but yes.
Later on, when I asked you these questions, do you recall telling me that it was only 2 pills?
I don't recall.
Do you recall if you in fact said that it was 2 pills, not 10?
I don't recall.
Sound like something you would say?
I don't know.
You were asked numerous times by police whether Mr. Quiles had ever communicated with you in any sexual manner whatsoever over social media, over any type of social media accounts, including Snapchat. Do you recall them asking you about this?
Yes.
Every time police asked you, literally every time, you told police that nothing inappropriate ever was discussed on any social media platform. Do you recall telling police that?
Yes.
In fact, in that statement that you gave to Detective Milowicki 4 months after, where you said you were coming clean and telling her everything, she asked you again, did he ever communicate with you via Snapchat? Did he ever talk about anything on Snapchat? And you told her no, it was just normal uncle-niece conversations on Snapchat, correct?
Correct.
It wasn't until June of 2023, 4.5 years later, when I asked you about that, that all of a sudden now you guys have had all of these sexually suggestive conversations on Snapchat, correct?
Correct.
That's something you never told police. Not even to this day as you sit here right now. Correct?
I guess.
You were actually asked by your Aunt Naomi when allegations and accusations started coming up about your Uncle John having any sort of sexual relationship with your sister. You were asked by your aunt if he had done anything to you.
I was never asked by her.
You claim as you sit here that she never asked you if anything inappropriate happened between the two of you. Let me finish the question before you answer.
Your Honor, I would just ask that counsel not be argumentative with the witness.
Why don't you just rephrase the question?
Judge, I was just trying to stop to make sure that the record was clear, but
I understand. I'm not faulting anybody. I'm just saying just rephrase the question.
of course. You're claiming that your Aunt Naomi never asked you whether there was any sort of sexual encounters, interaction, or anything between you and Mr. Quiles.
I don't recall her asking.
Okay. You don't recall her asking that question at all.
No.
Is your statement that she did not ask you that?
Not that aunt.
Not that what?
Aunt.
Other aunts asked you, though,
Yes.
and you told them nothing ever happened.
Correct.
All right, let me talk about the first encounter that you described. You stated you're at the beach, that you believe it was yourself, your sister, IS, and Mr. Quiles and his daughter, NQ, correct?
Correct.
But in fact, your brothers were there as well, KM and SG, correct?
No.
You don't recall telling police that your brothers were also present at that beach.
I don't recall them being there.
All of these people are on the beach, and you're claiming that just you were in the water when this sexual encounter occurred.
In that area, yes.
So they were all sitting on the beach, didn't notice anything going on in the water whatsoever.
No.
You never told any police officer about this beach incident.
I don't recall.
It wasn't until you were in your deposition in February of 2022, more than 3 years later, that you disclosed this beach incident, correct?
I'm not good with dates.
It wasn't any time close to when this incident occurred. And it definitely wasn't in that 4 months after conversation that you had with Detective Milowicki where you came clean about everything that happened between you and Mr. Quiles. Correct?
Correct.
As far as the incident that you described that happened in the van, today you testified that you were headed to Winn-Dixie and that he took you to some undisclosed or isolated area. You don't recall where that was or anything along those lines?
No.
Do you recall telling police that at one point it was in the abandoned parking lot near the Winn-Dixie?
I don't recall.
Do you recall telling police that at some point his daughter was in the car with you during some incident?
I don't recall.
Does Mr. Quiles have any, since you have testified that you all have had these sexual encounters, does Mr. Quiles have any distinct markings on his genitalia?
Not that I recall.
You've stated this throughout your testimony on direct, but I'm going to ask it to you again. At no point in time throughout this time period that you allege that these incidents occurred, did you ever mention anything to anyone, correct?
No.
Even in this incident that you allege where your Aunt Naomi was awake and within talking distance, you never said anything to her?
No.
You never yelled out, you never did anything along those lines?
No.
Even after your sister went missing, there were allegations of sexual abuse of your sister. You still, even then when you were asked, did not tell the truth about what you now claim happened. Correct?
Correct.
That's a serious situation going on if your sister's not being found, correct?
You think?
And you still didn't think that, hey, maybe I should disclose this information so that they know, hey, Mr. Quiles, he's been sexually abusing me and my sister. But you didn't think to do that, did you?
No.
You would agree that there has been little to no consistency in what you allege to have happened between you and Mr. Quiles.
No.
You started off saying he never did anything to you, correct?
Correct.
You changed, though, to what happened, when it happened, how many times it happened, who was there when these things happened. So many details of these incidents that you laid out vary depending on the day that you're asked. Got to be a lot to keep a track of, correct?
Correct.
Nothing further.
SS, do you go about your life wanting to think about the defendant sexually abusing you?
No.
Is it in fact something that you don't even want to think about?
Correct.
Do you want to forget about it?
Yes.
And did you ever tell anyone what the defendant did to you?
No.
Did you ever go to your mom and tell her?
No.
Were you in fact the one that got in confronted about it?
Yes.
And was that because your mom had found something?
Yes.
And based upon that, did your mom then confront you?
Yes.
Had your mom not found something and had not confronted you, would you have told?
No.
Were you afraid to tell anything?
Yes.
So you did not freely tell this information, did you?
No, I didn't.
Were you also protecting your sister?
Yes.
And why?
I thought she was going with my grandma, and
Can you? I know it's hard. Take a moment and breathe. I just want to make sure we all hear you, okay?
I thought she was going with my grandma, and I wanted to keep our friendship.
Did you think if you told about the sexual abuse that your sister would be mad at you?
Yeah.
And did you want to keep her secret from the world?
Yeah.
If you could.
Yeah.
But you couldn't, could you?
No.
Your mom found out.
Yeah.
Did your mom ask you any details about the sexual abuse when this first came out, when your mom found out?
Yes.
Did you want to tell her much?
No.
And did your mom respect that?
Yes.
And this was your mom finding out about the defendant sexually abusing you. That happened while your sister is missing. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Why in April were you ready to tell more about the sexual abuse?
She wasn't coming back.
Do you need a moment?
Okay.
I'm almost done, I promise. Is that when you knew you could break the promise to your sister?
Yeah.
And is that why you're willing to tell all about the defendant sexually abusing you?
Yeah.
Nothing further.
Ma'am, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.